Hello, students. Good morning. Okay, good morning to my girls, to my students. Okay, let me look at the comments. I see. Okay, good morning, Xin Hui. All right. Okay, so today we are going to start with chapter 7. Okay, it's going to be a short chapter, so we will finish quite soon. Okay, Jensen, good morning. Okay, hope you had a good night's rest. Okay, I will take attendance later when we go to Google Meet. Okay, so for this purpose, for this class, we will do on YouTube so that we can have a record of it, and other students can also have a chance to actually follow the class and the lesson. Okay, Ke, good morning. All right, now let's look at adaptations. Now, what is the meaning of adaptation? We have seen a lot of aspect from the plant from the previous chapters. Okay, we have seen of course, the latest one was the sexual reproduction. Okay, and then before that, we have also seen the organs and the parts of the plant and so on. So first of all, let me check my audio. Are you able to hear me well? Girls, can you put a comment here whether my voice is loud enough? If not, I need to check my settings. Can you hear me well? Is it loud enough? Because sometimes I heard comments that my computer has problems, so they cannot hear me. It's not loud enough. So far okay. Can you hear my voice? Yeah, okay. Yes, I can see a lot of Okay, thank you girls for your response. Okay, so now I'm going to go to this chapter, right? Adaptations of plants in different habitats. So before that, we have learned a lot of things about the plants, the organs, the tissues, the photosynthesis reaction, okay, all about many aspects of the plant. So this is the final part of the plant, right? Before we move on to another theme. This is the last chapter in the theme of plants. Okay, so we covered altogether 7 chapters after this chapter. So what is the meaning of adaptation? Okay, adaptation actually means is the changes, okay, what the plant or what the organism can do to have to make themselves better suited to live in a different condition. Okay, so we have many plants who live in many habitats. There are many different habitats all over the world. Some are dry, okay, some are wet, some are in the water. There are so many different habitats. All right, okay, so hi girls. Yeah, I see many girls joining now already. Good morning, everyone. All right, so now, so adaptation actually means, if you look at the definition of adaptation, right, adaptation is the process of change by which an organism or a species become better suited to its environment. Okay, so that means because the environment is different from place to place. So if you have a design of an organism that's the same, it will not be able to survive in different conditions because it doesn't have the special features to enable it to able to survive in that condition. Okay, so now afterwards we'll look at 4 different conditions and 4 different types of plants, right, which are better suited to stay in that condition, okay, in that environment. Okay, so now before that, I have an interesting thing to share with you. Now, if you look at a textbook, there is something called a terrarium here. I wonder how many of you have seen a terrarium. Often when I go to hotels and all that, I always see I see a terrarium as one of the decorations in the lobby. Okay, now terrarium is an interesting thing. It is actually like a mini ecosystem on its own. Okay, now what is a terrarium? It's actually a container made of glass, so that it must be transparent. Okay, and you have plants inside there, and also maybe little animals like ants, and also small little siput, right? Siput as in the snails and all that. Now they coexist in an environment that is just within itself. That means it is self-sustainable. You do not need to water it. You do not even need to, to do anything to it. It will survive on its own. Okay, so the interesting thing here is, what does it have? It has, of course, the environment. It has the terra. Terra actually means land, land, that means the soil and so on. So you have pebbles, you have charcoal, soil. Charcoal is a source of carbon. Okay, so you have succulent plants, you have cactus, and you have moss as the main medium. So you line up all these things in the first layer, all right, and in the ground. I mean, as the ground lah. Then after that, you plant your small little plants. They are able to tall enough, or short enough so that it can enter this glass container. And you can also put little animals like ants and so on. Okay, now this is a little ecosystem. Can you tell me why we don't need to water it? It has to be closed, huh? You have to close it with a glass lid and you just leave it alone. Of course, it has to be in the sunlight, right? Not too strong sunlight, but it has to have some kind of light. So what happens is the light, all right, will enable the plant to carry out photosynthesis. So it will able to produce oxygen. Okay, remember that, right? Photosynthesis is the process where the plant uses carbon dioxide and produces oxygen and also glucose. Okay, and the animals and of course the plant itself uses that oxygen for its respiration. So you see that there is a little like a, you know what I call a carbon and high oxygen kind of a cycle there. So it is a cycle that is ongoing. So you do not need to water it. Why do you not need to water it? It's because when it's hot enough, right, the water will evaporate, and when it evaporates or transpiration happens, you find that it's closed, so the water will condense. So when the water condenses, it drops back into the environment itself, into the soil, and it's like a whole little, it's like a cycle all over again. So you don't need to water it. Okay, that's the interesting part of it. It is self-sustainable. So that's why it's very interesting to have a terrarium. You can make it yourself. Okay, you must put the correct amount of the correct types of soil, the pebbles and all that, and then of course you put in the some plants and some animals, and they coexist. Okay, so that is a terrarium for you. Okay, so now let's go on to the types of habitats. Okay, now so we know that there's going to be different habitat all over the world. So we're going to look at 4 different types of plants which are suited to live in that environment. So here you will see some living in the water. All right, so the plants that live in water are called hydrophyte. Okay, as you always see, the word prefix hydro means water. Okay, and then there are some that live in very salty environment like paya bakau. Okay, paya. These are called what we call the swamp areas. So these plants that live there are called halophytes. Okay, we're talking about the plant. So for the word phyte, it actually means the plant. It's not talking about the habitat. The word mesophyte, hydrophyte, halophyte, and xerophyte, they are not referring to the environment. They're actually talking about the plant itself, because the word phyte actually means plant. Okay, remember that? Okay, so you have 4 types of 4 groups of plants which are suited to stay in different environments. So you have mesophyte. Okay, what is meso? I'll show you the meaning afterwards. Mesophyte. Hydrophyte. Hydro means water. Halo. Now, halo, I think you learned in chemistry before. You've seen one group of elements which are under what we call halogens. Okay, can you tell me what are halogens? Or can you tell me what group halogens are in? Okay, remember your chemistry, not they're all interrelated. Science is always interrelated. Okay, the interesting part about it is, so halogens are actually those elements that are put in the group 17. Okay, can you give me some examples of halogens? Okay, halo actually means salt. If you can look at here. Now, phyte means plant. Meso means middle. Middle, that means not on the extreme side. They are more or less in the medium range, not too hot, not too dry, that kind of thing. Okay, halo actually means salt. So halogens are elements which are able to react with acid to form salts. Okay, what are the examples of halogens? Halogens are, I think you need to recall your chemistry, chlorine, bromine, iodine, astatine, all this under the group 17. They are able to combine or react with acids to form salts. For example, calcium chloride. Okay, you get chloride. Chloride is a salt. Sulfate. Okay, chloride, iodide. All these are salts. Okay, and xerophyte actually means dry. Okay, so dry environment. Plants that live in dry environment like the desert, they are called xerophytes. Okay, now let's look at these classifications. Right now, mesophytes are those plants which we normally see. mostly in our environment, the ones that we always see, because our condition here in where we stay is not too dry, not too wet, it's not in the water and so on. So it is actually mesophytes. Most of the plants that we see are mesophytes. Example, mango tree, hibiscus, okay, rubber tree, maize, many of the trees that we are commonly come across. So mesophytes are plants that live in habitat that is not too dry or not too wet, that has enough supply of water and sunlight. So most of the terrestrial means land, okay, land plants. Plants that live on land are called terrestrial plants. They are mesophytes. So they have the characteristic of what we learned earlier. Remember, we learned in chapter 2 about the structure of the leaf. You have the palisade mesophyll, you have the spongy mesophyll, and the cuticle on the top layer, more stomata on the lower epidermis and all that. That one is the common features of plants, which refer mostly to mesophytes. The one we normally learn, okay, the earlier part of the chapter, earlier part of this theme, the chapter 2 there. So those are mesophytes characteristics. Okay, now let's look at hydrophytes. Hydrophytes are plants that live in aquatic environment. That means plants that live in the water. So there will be actually two groups of plants that live in the water. One is either they are floating plants, they live on the surface. For example, like lotus. Again, lotus, they live on the surface there, and also the we call it dayang bunting, okay, Acornia, dayang bunting. Then there is another group which are submerged. The whole plant is not seen on the surface. It actually lives in the water, like those you see in aquariums, like hydrilla. Hydrilla is a common plant that we put in aquariums. Okay, hydrilla, elodia, and carbomba. So these are the three common types of submerged plants that we put in the aquarium. Okay, and we usually use hydrilla or elodia for the experiment of photosynthesis to measure the rate of photosynthesis. Remember, where we have an experiment, we didn't have time to do it, of course. Then we put plants, and then we put the light, right? We put the light, we let it receive sunlight from the lamp, and then we measure the number of bubbles released by the plant. We normally use elodia or hydrilla. Okay, that bubbles are actually oxygen because they are carrying out photosynthesis. Okay, so these are known as aquatic plants. Other examples with water lettuce, okay, all the plants that we see living in the aquatic environment. Okay, if there are any questions, please do feel free to put in your comment put in the comment here. All right. Okay, halophytes. Halophytes, these are the plants that live in swampy habitats, usually at the Kuala Sungai. Kuala Sungai is the place, what we call it in English, we call it estuary. Estuary means it's the river mouth, the part the river joins to the sea. Like places like Kuala Sepetang. Okay, there's a little nelayan, we call it fishing village, that is actually very near to Taiping, about a few kilometers away from Taiping, about 10 kilometers away from Taiping. It is at the beach here, and you have a lot of mangrove swamps there, a lot of mangrove tree. In Mandarin, we call it hong su. Okay, we call it something, if you translate, call it red tree lah. It's not really red tree, it's not red in color. It just call it as hong su. This is mangrove tree actually. And they are very suited to stay in this environment. What kind of environment is it? It is very salty, right? Because the river brings a lot of salt from the upstream. So the river, as it comes down to the sea here, of course, it deposits a lot of the soil, and it becomes very swampy, very soft. The soil is very soft. So because it's very soft and it's very wet, so there's a very little oxygen inside the soil. Okay, and it has high salt content. So the river mouth, we call it estuary, is the river mouth. Okay, so it's the place where the river joins the sea. So it's very salty. Okay, of course the sea is also salty, right? It's the meeting point of fresh water and seawater. So it has very rich, high content in salt. Okay, then another group of plants will be xerophytes. Now these are quite common that you see in, of course we know that we have cactus over here in Malaysia also, but usually these are plants actually that cannot stand a lot of water. Okay, so because they are more suited to stay in hot and dry areas. Dry, another name of it is called arid. Okay, arid means dry also, another word that you can see here, same meaning. Very little presence of water, very little minimal water, so, and also high temperature, just like desert. That's Samo desert. So you have cactus, right? Cactus, actually, one thing a lot of people do not know, cactus actually, many of them are flowering plant. That's actually flower. Okay, sometimes we always see the cactus stem, but we don't see the flower. But some of them are actually flowering plants. And date palm, in BM, it's called kurma. Okay, you know, in bulan Ramadan and all that, when they berpuasa, the Malays would normally take around kurma. Kurma, you get a lot of it in what? Saudi Arabia, Iran, and all this in the Middle East, the Arabic countries and so on, because they are very suited to stay in the hot and dry environment. Okay, kurma. So normally, why they so famous? Why normally the puasa they take kurma? Because of their practice. Let's say last time Nabi Muhammad, they used to break fast. So that means the first thing that he eats after fasting the whole day, around 7 something they eat, right? They book up puasa. The first thing they eat is kurma. So that's why they follow the tradition of Nabi Muhammad when they eat the kurma to break fast. Break fast means the first meal after they fasting is called break the fast. Okay, so they eat kurma and drink water. Okay, it's sweet, so it sort of like makes you more what do you call that, appetizing lah, to make you feel like you want to take the next meal. All right, so this is the 4 types. Remember, phytes refer to plants, not the environment. All right, okay, let me check. Okay, no comments here, no questions yet. All right, so I've covered here now. So let's look at the first one. So for halophytes, there are more facts here. There are more facts here, and this is a popular essay question. So please take note. All right. If you want to memorize some facts and all that, please do concentrate on halophytes, okay, and the mangrove trees, because it's quite popular, right? So let's look at the condition first. What kind of condition is it at the swamp or Paya Bakau? What kind of conditions? Okay, there are 3. First of all, you need to remember that it has high concentration of salt. Okay, of course, naturally, like I mentioned just now, the river brings a lot of salt to the sea. Of course, sea is also a place where they have a lot of salt content. Number 2, it has low oxygen content. That means the soil is very muddy, the soil is very soft, and because of so much water there, the soil is very difficult for the oxygen to dissolve in it, so you have low oxygen content. That's also a problem because the roots also need oxygen. Okay, so these are problems. These are the existing conditions. Number 1, too salty. Number 2, very low oxygen. Number 3 is because by the seaside here is usually quite sunny. Quite sunny means a lot of sunlight. So it's high intensity of light. Okay, so these are the 3 existing conditions at the Paya Bakau or swampy area. And most plants, the mesophytes, cannot stay there. Okay, because it's, like I said, too salty and low oxygen, and also it's too sunny, too hot, and it will evaporate. The water transpiration will be quite high. Okay, so the water will disappear from the plant quite easily. So you have to have special features for these mangrove trees to be able to live there. So what are the special features? Okay, so I'm going to look at my notes here because I've got a little bit more here compared to the textbook here. So I will look at here. All right, later you can play back this and you can look at the points and you can jot down, right? Now, plants, we have gone through number 1 here. There are 3 conditions here, right? High salinity. Salinity means salt also. Okay, when you say high salinity, it means high salt content. 盐度is salinity. Okay, low oxygen and strong sunlight. Okay, now, so another problem is it lacks oxygen. Lacks oxygen is because it's muddy. It's waterlogged. Waterlogged means a lot of water there. Okay, I have a comment here. Okay, right, no problem. Okay, see me not coming. All right, it's okay. Actually, you can watch the video later. It's always there in my channel. Okay, so now let's look at the adaptive structures. So usually adaptive structures are referring to the root, the stem, and the leaves. So these are the 3 organs which will have special features built in. All right, we call it nature's way of adapting. They have certain things that other plants don't have. So they're special features. So when you talk about adaptation, you need to know how to answer questions. So later I'll tell you how to answer the questions. Again, it's always following the principle of F plus E. Okay, remember, I think you know what I mean. Feature plus explanation. Okay, later we go on. We explain that. So number 1, now what kind of roots do plants that live in this kind of salty area have. So you have special roots. Okay, now what are the special roots? You have either this cable root, sometimes you have a combination of all three. So cable roots, prop roots, and buttress roots. Okay, now in your textbook don't have this, but this is a feature that I need to explain to you. So cable root are a system of roots with widespread roots. That means underground. You can't see it from the top. You cannot see from where you are standing. It's all underground and is spreading very, very wide and all around, so that it is able to grip the soil and also able to give a high surface area to sort of like make the plant more stable. Okay, I'll give you an example. The picture here, you see, these are the cable roots which are underground. Right? The ones that are jutting up on top is a different one. That is pneumatophore. That's number 2. Okay, the next one. So not number 2, this is the next category. So this is cable root. Okay, I'll show you another diagram of cable roots here. All right, okay, right here. Yeah, right. You will see that there is it's quite extensive. That means it goes all over and it covers a wide area. So this is cable roots. Okay, so the main purpose here is to anchor it, because you see the soil is very soft. If you do not have a proper anchor, proper grip on it, the plant is quite heavy. It will topple over. Of course, once it topple over, that's the end of it lah, right? The plant will not be able to survive. So secondly, prop roots. This is also another way of support. So this is actually support. The first feature we're talking about is for support. Cable root, prop root, and buttress root. Okay, so number 1, support. Okay, prop roots are those roots which actually look like this. You see my hand, right? It's very ugly. It juts out from the stem, the main part of the stem, and it's sort of like, you know, it reaches all over, and it also, of course, creates a very stable base. So this prop root, now something like this, you can see very clearly, right? This is definitely what you see, prop roots. Okay, they look like hands of a ghost, right? Like that, very ugly. So they jut out everywhere, and they make it the plant very, very stable. They're able to grip the soil, all right, so that it can support the weight of the tree. So this is prop roots. Another name for prop root is stilt root. So you can see this word here, I put in stilt. They have the same meaning. You can use stilt or prop, but more commonly we say prop. Okay, number 3, buttress root. Buttress root is where the roots grow on the surface of the soil. Now, this one we commonly see in our in the Mesophytes also. You have very big trees where the trunk is very, very wide, and then at the base of it, it goes like stretches all over. Okay, example. Okay, this one doesn't seem to be very, very clear. So I'll show you buttress root. This one. Yeah, hang on. Here. This is buttress roots. I'm sure you'll see that. All right. So it's very easily, sometimes you trip over these trees, right? When you walk in the forest, right? Because the roots come out and they bulge out. So what it does is actually give support. Okay, you have a wider area, a wider spread. So here, this is a prop root, all right? Prop root, and this is the stilt root. This is the buttress root. Okay, all right. So these are the 3 types of root, and mainly purpose is for support. All right, okay, support. Now we go to other features that also help. Number 2 is, how do they overcome the problem of not getting enough oxygen? We say the soil is lacking oxygen, correct? The number 1 is no support. The soil is soft. Number 2, not enough oxygen. So how do they overcome this problem? They have something, a feature called breathing roots, or we call pneumatophores. So you do not pronounce the P sound, the P letter, you just pronounce the N there. Say pneumatophore. Okay, just like the word pneumonia. Pneumonia is the bacteria infect our lungs, right? It's an infection of the lungs. It's a pneumonia. You also got a P there, but you don't pronounce the P. So what are these? These are what you see here, like needle points, you know, roots that stick out from the soil. So there. So it's in the mangrove trees or the mangrove swamp, it's quite difficult to go in and maneuver yourself there because of all these little things sticking out. And of course, you can't step onto it, right? When you see all these things, you sort of don't feel like going in already, because you see all these are like nails pointing up. So they are called lenticel. These are at the tip of pneumatophore, you have lenticel. And lenticel are little pores, okay, pores which allow oxygen to move in. So this is how they get oxygen. When the soil does not have enough oxygen, so they get it from the air. Okay, so the lenticel is actually the pore. The whole structure, the root that sticks out is called pneumatophore. Okay, so do not mix up the names. So the function is to enable the exchange of gases with atmosphere, or to obtain oxygen, okay, to attain more oxygen can absorb oxygen directly from the air. Okay, so that is to overcome the problem of what? Oxygen. So the second one is, this is to overcome the problem of oxygen, lack of oxygen. Okay, the third one, how do we overcome the problem of being too salty? Okay, the soil is so salty. So how are they able to absorb water in? Because if we learn, like remember we learn our osmosis problem, our osmosis process. Let's look at this root hair. Okay, let's say this is the root, the cell from this mangrove, from this common tree lah. We don't talk about mangrove now. This is the normal tree lah. All right, normal tree, we have this root hair. So this is soil. Now, if this normal plant were to live in mangrove tree, mangrove area, mangrove swamp lah, okay, swampy area, the soil will be very salty, right? So if it's very salty, it will be considered a high salt content. So the condition will be considered as hypertonic, compared to what? Hypertonic to the sap, the cell, okay, the sap cell, or the cell sap, so this will be relatively, by comparison, the cell sap here will be hypotonic, correct not? This will be considered as hypotonic, because more salt outside, but comparatively inside the cell there is less salt, that means more water lah, all right? So it's hypotonic. So what's going to happen if you let osmosis take its course? So water will always move from a concentration of a region of higher water content to a region of lower water content, or we say water will diffuse from a hypotonic region to a hypertonic. So as a result, if this is a normal plant, I'm not talking about mangrove yet. So normal plant, water will actually diffuse out. So is that a good thing? Water diffusing out rather than coming in. So this is not a good thing, right? That means the plant will not be able to obtain water. Okay, so ultimately the plant will wilt and the plant will die, okay, because it's dehydrated. Water will come out from the cell. So how does mangrove trees overcome this problem of staying in a hypertonic soil? How is still able to do it? Okay, so the thing is, even though we say the soil is a very salt content, a very high content, but for mangrove trees that stay in this swampy area, the cell sap itself is actually even more concentration, even higher concentration of salt. So even though we say the soil water is already salty, right? Okay, but for cell sap of this mangrove, now we're talking about mangrove tree, the cell sap of this cell, the root hair cell and everything, is actually even more hypertonic. So this comparatively is the hypotonic one. Okay, even though this is comparatively, so that means this is hypo already, the soil considering is not so salty already. So this is how they overcome. Even though we say the soil is already very salty, but in the cell is even more salty. Okay, so even more salty, that means it's hypertonic. Then the outside condition is hypotonic. That means what? That means now water will still be able to diffuse from outside to in. Okay, so the cell sap has a higher osmotic pressure. So it has got more salt even compared to the mangrove, the soil in the swamp. So no problem, they can still take in water. Okay, so only mangrove trees, only the trees that stay in this mangrove areas are able to. Normal plant cannot. Normal plant will be able, the water will definitely run out. So now, but in this case, they are so special. The cell sap is even more salty, higher salt concentration than the soil, so water still can go in. Okay, no problem for them. They can still get water. They don't die. All right. So here, how to write it? How to write? So you write like this here. So the root cell have cell sap with higher osmotic pressure. Higher osmotic pressure means more salty lah. There's another, I want you to understand that when something has got higher salt content, that means it has higher osmotic pressure. More salt means higher osmotic pressure. Okay, compared to the seawater now, that means seawater is even more salty than the seawater. So plasmolysis will not happen. Water will not diffuse out, but instead, water will still be able to go in through osmosis. Okay, so this is the third thing lah. The third thing. Number one is how to overcome support. You must know the 3 types of root system. Then the root types. Number two is how to overcome not having enough oxygen. So you talk about the pneumatophores. Then number 3, how to overcome the problem of the soil being too salty or high. We call it high salt content. Then you have cells, the cells itself even more salty, okay? More salt concentration. Okay, so we're done with the roots. Now, what about the leaves? They also have special features. Okay, like we know it's very, very sunny, so a lot of sunshine, so it's going to evaporate the water. Transpiration rate will be quite high at the swampy area. How do you prevent transpiration rate, or not prevent, you have to reduce the transpiration rate. You cannot prevent, transpiration will happen. It's just more or less only. The problem is whether more or less. So you cannot say to prevent transpiration in your answer. Don't write to prevent transpiration, it's wrong. You must say to reduce transpiration. Okay, how to reduce it? So you do not want water to evaporate so much, so you have cuticles. Cuticle is a waxy substance. It's made of wax. So as you know, wax is waterproof. Okay, okay, so the water will not be able to evaporate so much. So it has thick cuticles. That's the first feature, one feature. Number 2 is sunken stomata. There's something you have not heard before. Normally we learn the stomata is on the surface of the leaf, right? More on the lower epidermis for normal plants, mesophytes and all that. But for this one, they're not on the surface, they're actually sunken in. Okay, so I'm going to show you a picture. What is sunken stomata? So if you see here, where is it? Here. Now, this is sunken stomata. You see, this is a electron micrograph. That means it's put under high magnification. All right, only that you'll be able to see the 3D kind of thing here. You see these guard cells. Okay, so I'm drawing here the 2 guard cells here. They are not exactly on the surface. They're actually, there's a sort of a little cave, or what they call, it curves inwards. So you can see that. And this one is just stoma. So if you want to see a cross section, okay, look at the cross section. Let me draw the outline of the. This is the outline of the epidermis. So this is the epidermis. Now you see it curves inwards. All right, it curves inwards here, and then I do make it a bit bigger. Right, so it goes out. This is the surface of the leaf. Okay, now here you will see, I put in red color, the guard cells. So you can see 2 guard cells here. There's 1 guard cell here. There's another guard cell here. It's quite small. I have to maximize it a little bit, make it a bit bigger. Then you can see 2 little structures here. The guard cell here, guard cell here. There's another guard cell here, and another guard cell here. You see that? So you can see the stoma in between the 2 guard cells. So you can see it's not directly on the flat, this is the lower epidermis, this is upper epidermis, and of course to prevent it, of course you have more stoma on the lower side. Then you see it's all like, it's hidden away. It's like a recess is coming in, now it goes inwards. So you will see this is your stoma. All right, this is your stoma here. There's one white, clear, let me put blue. There is one stoma here. There's another stoma here. There's another stoma here. Okay, right? So this is what you mean by sunken stomata, which is also a common feature in xerophytes, plants that stay in the desert or the hot and dry areas. Okay, we will see again when we look at xerophytes. All right, okay, so now we are looking at the leaves now. We are here. All right, so here. That's two features for the leaves. Okay, another one is they are thick and succulent. What does it mean by succulent? Succulent means that it's very thick. It's able to have juice inside. Succulent means juicy. In other words, succulent is juicy. So it's thick. Inside there a lot of water. It can store water. So that will be overcome the problem of not of this losing water lah. Okay, so it's to reduce transpiration. Don't say prevent, right? And then number three, that's number three already. Number four now. Hydrophytes. Hydrophytes, you have seen hydrophyte before when you talk about mutation. Remember, this is the strawberry leaf, and at certain times, I remember when it cannot reduce water, it cannot remove water through transpiration. Early in the morning, when the humidity is very high, when it's very wet, you have water coming out from the hydrophytes. Again, you got little beads of water stuck there. So this hydrophyte is not so much to remove water because it's lacking water in this kind of environment. It's actually to reduce excess salt. Okay, of course there is water because you need water as a medium. You cannot just remove salt without water because you need water as a medium to dissolve the salt. What it means is just that the liquid that comes out is actually very salty. That means a lot of salt content but very little water. Okay, so this is the way to eliminate excess salt because it's already getting in salt from the ground. It's so salty the area. So this is how they control the osmotic pressure of the cells. Okay, too salty is also not good, right? So that's how they remove the extra salt from the plant itself. And another one, number 5, the old leaves, right? When they become old enough, they actually shed. They will drop off, isn't it? So those old leaves, that actually they store salt inside there. So when they drop off or they die, all right, and then this is the way they remove it from the plant. Okay, so they drop off. This plant drop off when the plants, the leaves die off. This is how they remove the extra salt content from the plant. Okay, so this is a diagram showing all this, all right? But I want to summarize it all into this diagram here. This is drawn by another teacher. All right, she was so gracious enough to let me have to use it. So later on, you can play back this. You may want to draw it. All right, so you may want to draw it, and then you can put all your notes all together. All the points here, there are 11. I've added, actually there are 9 in the textbook here, but I've added another. She's added another 2 more. Right, so we're adding 2 more points here. So let's look at first. Let's summarize. These are the conditions. Okay, high sunlight, that means high light intensity, waterlogged. So these are the features, sunlight. And then the problem here is you have dehydration, high transpiration rate. This is the feature and then the problem. Okay, muddy soil, waterlogged. The problem here is low oxygen. Okay, high salinity, the problem here will be dehydration. So how do we reduce transpiration rate? So these are the features, right? So these are we call the F. Okay, so remember when you want to answer questions, always talk about the F. F is the feature. Okay, F is the feature. What is the special feature here? What does the plant have? And how it helps is the E. So feature is here, feature is here. The leaves are thick, have thick cuticle, have sunken stomata, succulent leaves, thick and succulent, so to store water. So it's to something. These are the E. E is explanation. The feature F plus E. Okay, then you get 1. It must have pairing. F must have the E to pair it with. Then you get the point. Okay, that's number 1, 2, and 3 done. Now number 4, leaves with hydrophytes. Okay, so this is the F. The hydrophyte is the F. And then the E here is to overcome the high salinity problem, to excrete excess salt. So another F and the E, right? It's a pairing. Number 5. So old leaves, they also store the salt and they fall off when the concentration of salt is too high. So the E here, this is the F, right? F is the leaves able to fall off, and the E here is to excrete excess salt to overcome the salinity problem. Okay, number 6. Root system. This root system, we have these prop roots, buttress root, underground cable root. The E here is to support the plant in soft muddy soil. Okay, because it's soft, right? So you need to have a proper support. Okay, number 7. Breathing roots. This is your F, pneumatophores. Breathing roots are called pneumatophores. This is to overcome the problem of having low oxygen content in the soil, okay, because of waterlogged conditions. Then another one is having lenticel. The lenticel is on the pneumatophore. So the lenticel is here. This is a pneumatophore. Okay, what I draw here is the pneumatophore. Lenticel is there to allow exchange of gases, oxygen. Okay. Then number 9. The cell sap of the root cells are hypertonic. Okay, so remember it said that the root cells are even more salty compared to the soil. So this is your F. And the E, so that plasmolysis will not happen. All right, the plants do not lose water by osmosis, but the water will still be able to enter the cell, okay, through osmosis. This is to avoid dehydration. Okay, normal plants cannot do that. The water will come out. Then number 9, number 10, we're going to add a little bit more because it's not in your textbook. So this is a special feature of plants in the mangrove. Some of them are able to have the seeds germinate while they are still attached to the plant. That means they are before the seed. Normally we have a fruit, the seeds inside there, right? It doesn't germinate, right? Unless the condition is very, very suitable. But usually what happens is when these seeds are there, they don't even drop off yet. The thing doesn't even drop off. The seed will start to grow and it will start to germinate. That means the radicle will come out, the plumule will come out, and then the advantage is so that it will have increased survival rate. Okay, how does it increase survival rate? That means what we can say is have a head start. If we haven't even started to detach from the plant, it already start to grow. Okay, now why is it a problem at the mangrove area? See, in the mangrove area, you have a lot of wave. Okay, a lot of wave will be always rushing in from the sea. And if the seed is dispersed in the normal way, without having this, starting to germinate, when the seed is dispersed, it goes into the water, it may be washed away. So this is a problem in areas where you have the tide coming in. So now vivipary is the condition, this is a phenomenon where the seeds or embryo begin to develop before they detach from the plant. Okay? So usually vivipary is used for the plants. Okay, the condition, the phenomenon where the seeds start to germinate is vivipary. Okay, there's another term called viviparity, okay, which we actually use for animals. Viviparity means the baby is born inside the body of the mummy. Okay, this is called viviparity. So viviparity is the word for animals. That means it will start to grow inside the body of the parent. It's called viviparity. But for plants, it's known as vivipary. Okay, I've looked it up in the Wikipedia. So it seems, we use the correct term, vivipary. So what's the problem I mentioned just now? Seedlings of some species are dispersed by current. Now, see, they'll be washed away by currents if they don't have this adaptation, if they drop in the water, okay? But those with that this germinate already, when it's still attached, it will develop a heavy, straight tap root. 它已经有那个group already, they already have a root that will penetrate the mud. It will get stuck into the mud. It's not going to be washed away. So it will, we call it, and increase the chances of the survival, okay? Effectively planting the seed and increasing the chances of survival. So this is called vivipary, which we have at these plants for plants who live in the swampy area. Okay, so vivipary. Okay, and number 11, another one, we have the leaves there are large, broad. Okay, this is to maximize the absorption of sunlight for photosynthesis. Okay, so there you have it. You have 11 points here, all summarized in a diagram form. All right, okay, so this is for you if you want to later, maybe you would like to draw it out, all right? Then you can have a diagrammatic form, you can remember the points better, right? So that I said, I stress on halophytes. Again, this is quite a common, quite a popular question, I would say. Okay, so after this lesson, I want you to do your workbook, right? So this workbook with all additional points added in by the other teacher, right? Fan Leong actually, so thanks to her. So later on I do it, I will share the answer with you, right? But you have to do it first and add in the points, okay? Add in the points, and then I do not want to let you see first because you will be copying it. So I do not want you to see first. You got to do it first. Okay, then next, let's go on to the next next type of plant. All right, this is for hydrophytes. Hydrophytes, as usual, you have adaptation to the leaves, roots, and stem. All right, so most of these hydrophytes have fibrous roots. Okay, now what are fibrous roots? Okay, if you remember, you have the monocot, now that they have fibrous roots, right? Okay, I'll show you fibrous roots. These roots usually like this. So fibrous roots may be red color. Okay, so fibrous roots are roots that are extensive, they are very fine, they are very small. You don't have one distinct root. So the fibrous roots provide large surface area, and also they trap air bubbles, enable it to float. So this is for the either sinking or the floating one, submerged or floating. They will usually have fibrous roots. Okay, so they're able to, if they submerge, it can grip the soil better. If it's floating type, the fibrous will be able to trap air bubbles, so it makes it more buoyant. Okay, so the root is there. Okay, mentioned already. So now leaves and the stem. Okay, let's look at the leaves and the stem. Now the whole plant lacks cuticle. Okay, cuticle is the waxy surface on the leaf. So usually for aquatic plant, you don't need the cuticle there. Can you tell me why? Okay, as you know, cuticle is to prevent what? It is not prevent, it's to reduce transpiration, right? But in the aquatic plants, water is not a problem, correct or not? It's always in the water. You'll be always able to get water. So the problem of loss of water doesn't exist. The problem doesn't exist. So you don't need to have a layer of cuticle on the leaves there. Okay, so especially for the one in the submerged one, you don't need to, because it's the whole plant is submerged in water. You don't need to have cuticle there. And then what else? You have small and fine leaves for the submerged one. Okay, those are I'm talking about the submerged plants. They must have small and thin leaves. All right. Now, why small leaves? Why not big leaves? So if you look at hydrolite, Elodia and Carbomba, there's another species here. So they normally have all these small little leaves. I'm sure you've seen it at aquariums. We also did experiments for when you look at the, I think we're supposed to, I'm not sure whether you did last year. I think you did last year, hydrilla and the chick cell one. So we can see the stoma actually through the hydrilla because it's very thin. You don't even have to slice the leaf. You put one piece of the leaf on the slide, covered with the cover slip, you're able to immediately see the stoma, the chloroplast there. You can see the chloroplast. They are small for a purpose because it's to reduce resistance of the water current. What does that mean? If you have a big piece of leaf in the water, when the current moves, it's going to, because of the water, the surface area is large, it's going to create a big resistance. So when the current is moving, right, it's going to carry away the whole plant. The whole plant can also be pulled up, or we call it uprooted from the soil. So in order to reduce the resistance, the leaf have to be very small so that when the water current move, it's not going to be able to lift your whole tree or the whole plant up. It's not going to be able to pull up the whole plant out of the ground, okay, out of the water, all right? So it's to reduce resistance. So it must be small if it's submerged. If it's on the surface, it can be big because it can be floating on the surface. Usually those who are floating will have big leaves, but those who are submerged will have small leaves. Okay, now no stomata on the leaves. In that case, then how do they carry out gas exchange? It's actually on the stem. Okay, so most of the stomata for these submerged plants, hydrilla, they're on the stem. They're not on the leaves. Okay, there are many air spaces, so to make it buoyant, so they are able to, when it's in the water, it will be able to float upright. Okay, it will be able to stand up straight. So there's air spaces inside the stem itself. Okay, so it's supported by buoyancy. So in the water, there's no problem. There is always buoyancy. Plants are able to float. When you must make air bubbles inside there, right? There must be some space there, so you're able to support to be supported by the buoyancy of the water. Okay, so you have it there. Now floating have slightly different characteristics. Okay, the roots have air spaces. All right, remember your what you call the arrow root? Not arrow root. What you call lotus root. 莲藕啊 teratai. When normally your Chinese like to boil soup one. You see there are a lot of holes there, right? What we are actually eating is the root of the what? Of the terratai plant, like that one. Remember, all right? This like that. And then inside here, if you cut across, you will see how you will see a lot of lubang. This is when you eat your what lah? Your this lotus root lah. Okay, you slice it and then you can eat it. Right? This is your lotus. So there's a lot of air spaces to enable them to float. Okay, look at the leaves. For the floating plants, the roots do not grow all the way down. So they are floating. The leaves also, the roots are also floating. Okay. So next one, for the leaves, they are broad. They are big, right? They are flat. So they can absorb maximum sunlight for photosynthesis. They are to get more sunlight. And they have very thin cuticles, right? Very thin cuticles. They don't have to have a lot of cuticle because they don't need to conserve water. Water is everywhere. They are literally staying in the water. So they don't have thick cuticles. They may have cuticles, right? Then they have this special feature called parenchyma. Okay, parenchyma, the stems and the leaves are special air spaces, which are called parenchyma. So the function here is to enable the plant to float, because when you have air bubbles here, or it will capture a lot of air, so you are able to float. Okay, let's show you this one. Okay, this is parenchyma, parenchyma tissue in the on the stem of the plant. Another one you can see here is on the textbook here, not here. Okay, those of you who have eaten what we call the terratai, eaten the terratai, biji terratai, no? The lim pong, all right? Remember this one? Some of you like to eat this one, all right? You buy this, this one, a lot of this biji one, right? This one. That if you cut across the stem here, you notice that the stem is very airy, just like this. The stem is like this, and you cut across the stem. All right. So this is the one eat one we buy, right? You call it lotus seeds. Okay. So parenchyma. Remember the name? Parenchyma tissues. So they are able to make it to float. Then the lower epidermis do not have stomata, right? On the other hand, the stomata will be on the top surface. Okay, because if it's lower stomata is touching the water, right? How are you going to get oxygen from there? Isn't it? It's facing the bottom side, or the water is on the bottom side, right? So another one, you have upper epidermis, we have a waxy cuticle, right? But it's not very, very thick. Okay, and the support comes from the parenchyma tissues, and also, of course, the buoyancy of the water. Okay, large air spaces to enable the plant to float. Okay, examples here will be the water hyacinth, which is called the dayang bunting. Okay, you see the plant here, the stem is very bulbous, very fat like that. And you call it English, in scientific terms, it's called Econia. Then water lily, this is nymphae. Okay, and another one is Nelumbium, okay, which is the lotus. All right, okay, so that is the water hydro. Okay, let's go to xerophytes. Xerophytes are plants to stay in very little water environments. Okay, this one is about the same. The plant, this one floating and submerged is about the same here. We go to xerophytes now. So these are for basically examples with the cactus lah. Okay, so let's look at the notes here. So there are roots. Let's talk about the roots. You have shallow roots. So shallow roots, why do you need have shallow roots? Is to absorb water from the ground surface during lightest rainfall. So if the rainfall drops here, it's able to absorb it with the shallow roots. And on top of that, it also has got deep roots, which penetrate all the way down in order to search for water that is underground. Okay, there may be water deeper down in the layers of the ground. Okay, because when the evaporation, it only evaporates the top, so the bottom could still have water there. So the roots, you have deep roots to find water. Okay, next one, very common that you see all the cactus will have very thick green stem. So what you see here is actually the stem. You look at the cactus. So the cactus, those are this one. This one is actually the stem you're looking at. This one, right? The one that comes out like this, all the thorns and all that come out. So this is not a leaf. There is no leaf. For most of the cactus, there's no leaf. In fact, you have these thorns. Okay, so don't talk about the leaf. All right, you actually talk about the stem when you talk about xerophyte. Don't say leaves. Okay, it has very few leaves, or sometimes don't even have leaves. Okay, let's talk about the stem first. Their stem is green. You have chloroplast, so the photosynthesis happens at the stem. Okay, it is able to store water because they are succulent. Succulent means it's juicy, right? Sometimes people who are lost in the desert, right? They just have to cut off one of the stem here, remove the thorns. You just slice into it, and then you squeeze the internal part of that. You can actually get water. You can survive. Okay, when you can survive on the water inside, stored in the cactus. So this is one way of getting water. Okay, you just squeeze the water. I mean the tissues that are inside the stem. Okay, next. Leaves, very little. So even if they are small, right, and they have to have thick cuticle to prevent, don't prevent again, to reduce transpiration. Okay, and then most of them have become thorns, right? Thorns. You can see cactus is very synonymous with thorns, isn't it? Right? You can see cactus, one of the, you always think it's protection. It's true lah. But more importantly is for them to conserve water in a dry environment. So how does thorn help to conserve water? By having thorns, they reduce the totals because there's no leaves. So by having thorns instead of leaves, so there's going to be less total surface area exposed because the leaf is very flat and very big, isn't it? So it's flat, you get a lot of surface area. But the thorn is sharp. So when it's sharp, you get very little surface area, right? It will reduce water loss by transpiration, and also helps to help the cactus to get water. How? By collecting dew. So when it's sharp pointed, the water vapor will condense, will touch there, you condense, you get water. So it will turn into water, then it will drop into, when it's cold enough, you condense, it drop, and the water will drop onto the ground, and it will be absorbed by the shallow roots. Okay, and another one, of course, protection, prevention from being eaten by plants. Okay, so another one is sunken stomata. So this is the one stomata I told you. I mentioned, show you the picture just now. This one also a feature of xerophytes. So these are the features here. So you can count how many there are. All right, 1, 2, 3, 4. Succulent is 4. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. 5 thorns. Thorns. 6 sunken stomata. Okay, you have at least 6 features here. So here, let's recap with a diagram form. So waxy layer to preserve water or reduce transpiration. Deep roots to absorb water. Then you have roots that are shallow to absorb water that drops from the surface, right, from the ground, on the ground level. Thorns to prevent from being eaten for protection. Thorns also to reduce water loss, right? Because to reduce the total surface area, reduce water loss to transpiration, and also some parts of the plants, the stem can store water, and also the tubers sometimes can store water. Okay, there are parts adaptations here. Okay, so we've done 3. Now we go to the last part, which is mesophyte. So your textbook does not have mesophyte. Okay, mesophyte is actually the common plants that we see. Right, all this is xerophyte in your textbook. There's no mesophyte here. So we look at mesophyte now. Mesophytes. Okay, so these are plants that grow in environment with adequate supply of water. So our normal environment. Okay, meso actually means middle. Middle means 中性. It's not too extreme the meaning there. Okay, so it's middle. That's what it means by that. Let me widen this. Okay, so most of these are terrestrial. Most of the terrestrial plants are actually mesophytes. So the normal one you see rose, whatever plant that we have, the balsam, okay, palm, mango, rubber trees, and so on. So roots, how are these roots? They are well-developed root system. Okay, either they are fibrous or tap roots. So depending on whether they are monocot or udicot. For monocot, they have fibrous roots. For udicot, okay, now we call it udicot. Udicot, they have tap roots. So they are able to absorb water by osmosis. If absorb water, you say osmosis. If absorb mineral soil, you say active transport. Okay, remember, so water is always by osmosis, and absorbing mineral salt is by active transport. So ions are pumped into the cells. Okay, leaves. What about leaves? They are broad. Usually they are broad, right? They are flat, they are thin, like lamella. Just refer back to the chapter to the first part when we talk about the structures of the leaf. Okay, they all apply to the mesophytes. So large surface area for maximum absorption of sunlight for the purpose of photosynthesis. Many stomata, okay, many stomata to allow efficient exchange of gases. So again, remember your F and your E, okay? F first and then E. Explain. How does it help? F and E must match. Stomata is to allow efficient exchange of gases, respiratory gases, meaning oxygen and carbon dioxide. And of course, intercellular spaces also to help the gases to move around, diffusion of gases inside the leaf. Many chloroplasts, F, all right, to enable to carry out photosynthesis at a higher rate, at a high rate. Okay, more chloroplasts, especially the spongy mesophyll and the palisade mesophyll, and also the gut cells. The epidermis layer do not have chloroplasts; they don't carry out respiration. Do not carry out photosynthesis. Okay, only these three cells. Okay, support. What about support? Support, you have two types. You have either woody plants will have the wood, right, as a support, whereby for herbaceous plants, you have the turgidity of the plant because of the water pressure inside the cell, the hydrostatic pressure. So it depends on what kind of plant. Okay, herbaceous cells, you have turgidity, so it's important for them to stay hydrated. Otherwise, they become flaccid, all right? The plant will start to bend. Then woody plants, they have many silent tissues, and because of they are impregnated with lignin, they are fortified with lignin, so they give mechanical support, okay, especially for the woody plants. Okay, so that's it. We have covered. So for more features here, always remember to refer back to the chapter 2, the features that I've already mentioned. All these, the first part. Remember the features of the leaves. They are referring to mesophytes. Okay, and then of course the stoma more on the lower epidermis. Okay, so that we have covered here, all right? So as a summary, make sure you know all the features of these 4 types of plants. Again, phyte is referring to plant. And then the features here, always remember to talk about the feature and pair it with the explanation. They must match. For example, if you say something that does not match, it's gonna be wrong. For example, you say it has chloroplasts, many chloroplasts. Okay, it's many chloroplasts. The cell, this plant has many chloroplasts, or this cell has many chloroplasts. Then your E say, in order to prevent or to reduce transpiration of water or loss of water. Then your E does not match your F. Your F is talking about chloroplasts. Actually, the E should be to enable the plants to carry out photosynthesis. So if you put the wrong E, you do not get your marks. So make sure you need to know how to write. All questions on adaptation, okay, usually in the essay, but sometimes can come out in the structure also. You always answer with F plus E, and that must be a pairing. Okay, remember that. All adaptations questions. Question when they ask you for what is a special feature, what's the adaptation? Okay, so remember your halophyte is important here because there are many points. Okay, so we will stop here. All right, so please refer back. I will show you this part here so that you can make your diagram and so on. All right, so I will meet you back at Google Meet afterwards. All right, okay, so I will see you next lesson. Probably this Saturday 4 o'clock I will have another lesson. All right, because I need to actually we are a bit slow compared to other schools, and I do not know what else is going to be a lot of other interruptions and so on. So I might as well actually try to speed up a little bit. So we have more time later on the end of the year to do more revision questions. All right, okay. So, all right, I will stop here now and I will see you in afterwards. Okay, bye-bye. Bye-bye, girls.